Every time someone referenced Slytherin or some other aspect of Harry Potter, I was like, okay, wow. I don't even know what else to say. This is crazy. This is so fun. Hey everyone, welcome back to Leandra the TBR Zero. I am giving you another video vlog. I am not sure if anyone's gonna recognize this sweater, but I just finished recording the last video vlog I did, so I don't want anyone thinking, wow, she wears that sweater a lot. Is she okay? I promise this is the first time I'm wearing this sweater in a long time, but anyways, I'm sure no one was actually thinking about that, and I've just drawn attention to myself for no reason. Now, to get to the video vlog, I have changed things up a bit. Originally, I was thinking about doing just a solo video vlog for one specific book that I've already started before starting recording this, but then I was looking at my TBR stack and I realized that there was an opportunity that I was almost missing to combine two books in one video vlog, like every other vlog I've done on this channel. So the first book that I will be including in the vlog is Anonymous Sex, and now this was a book that I started in February, still haven't finished it, and to be honest, I think I've only read 7 of the 27 stories so far. So after this introduction, I'll be jumping right into my thoughts on the first 7 stories. But I thought this could be really fun because it's an anthology of erotic stories, and every author of every story in here is anonymous. All they do on the back of the book is give you a list of authors who are featured in the book, but they don't tell you which story is associated with which person, which I think is so awesome because not only can it be nerve-wracking to write erotic stories, I'm sure, and put your name on it, but having this anonymity in general allows for these writers to experiment not only with, say, a sex scene or some erotic moment, but they also can play with plot, with character development, maybe switch genres from what they are known for writing. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it so far, and I can't wait to let you guys know what I think as I continue through it. The second book that I'll be featuring in the video vlog is Red, White, and Royal Blue, and I'm sure everyone's read this by this point, and I'm one of the last people to actually have this book. It is a library book. I want to represent my local library, and I'm actually reading this because I'm a part of a book club, and this was the title selected for the month of March, and I thought that was perfect because apparently I'm not alone in not having read this book yet, but I also love the idea of pairing it with Anonymous Sex because this, I think, is such a sweet mainstream contemporary romance. Not only is it LGBT plus representing, you know, but I just love the premise of it. It seems like it's enemies to lovers, and there's kind of fake dating going on, or at least fake friendship from what I understand, but it just seems really fun, and I think it'll be a great balance for this that might be a little bit more heavy hitting in regards to the conflicts that also arise, because while this is erotic fiction, a lot more goes on than just, you know, people's sex lives. There's some really huge serious conflicts that just coincide with the characters' sex lives, and that's why I really appreciate this collection in general. But then with this one, this is also a genre I have barely dipped my toes into as well, just contemporary romance. So this will be a challenging video vlog for me, but I'm really excited. So if anyone has read these books and you're really excited for me to try them out, then leave a comment and let me know before we get started. But either way, let's get into the video vlog, and thanks for joining me, guys. Bye! Okay, first update, as promised, for Anonymous Sex. I honestly don't know how many stories I'm in. In the introduction I said 7, but let me just do a count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7, oh my gosh. So I have really enjoyed this collection so far. I probably came in with some biases, especially some, nervous tension, since I'm not familiar with erotic fiction, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how often I'd be blushing or how often I'd have to pause and collect myself before I continued reading. But one thing I can really emphasize here is how diverse the collection is, and they advertise it in the French flap blurb that exists. But yeah, it's just lovely. We have so many different types of sex lives being featured here. We have LGBT plus representation. We also have heterosexual sex going on. We have married and young people who are experiencing these moments. And we also just have a lot of diversity in genre. We've got very realistic contemporary fiction, but we also have futuristic sci-fi and speculative fiction going on, which is just so fun. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's no way I'm going to be able to decipher which author wrote which story. There's no way you would be certain of what any of these people have written. My favorite stories so far have probably been Altitude Sickness was really cool because it was all very like airplane related, and there were all of these little snippets into different people's lives that aren't connected, but it was just really interesting to see. And then honestly, History Lesson was a crazy wake-up call. Now that was the opening story, and it actually made me very nervous in multiple ways, and I think that's just because of the different experiences and cultural stories we've heard, I guess. So for instance, it involves, two professionals who decide to every year at a conference explore their sexuality and have fun. But one interesting thing that they participate in is dominance. And so this woman, who is definitely higher up in regards to respect and career compared to the man, she's the submissive one in their sexual relationship. And oh my gosh, like I was literally on edge wondering how this story would end, because certain aspects like videotaping and warnings of uploading said videos were a part of their dominant submissive relationship, and it was really freaking me out. And it was just a really interesting play on that, especially since that's such a huge, very topical thing to implement when it comes to like one's sex life and one's sexual urges or desires. So yeah, I was just really amazed by how well that one was written and how okay I felt at the end, because I was really scared. But yeah, I'll keep you guys updated, and I'll be honest if there are stories that I just don't like or that I wasn't comfortable with too. So yeah, until the next update. Bye guys. Switched up my reading pattern, and while I'm reading Anonymous Sex, I thought I would start Red, White, and Blue by Casey McQuiston. And I'm only about 100 pages in, and I think for most contemporary romances that would be a significant chunk of reading. But it seems that this book is a little over 400 pages, which is kind of crazy. I'm really interested to see how long it keeps my attention and if the narrative ever feels like the pace is too slow. For now, I am enjoying it so much. We have Alex, who is the first son of the President of the United States, and then we have Henry, who is the prince in England for the royal family. And I just love this twist on enemies to lovers / fake dating, because it's not even fake dating, it's fake friendship that leads them to slowly invest time and attention to each other. And I think that McQuiston does a really great job of it being realistic and taking time. A lot of times contemporary romances, understandably because it's part of the genre, are very quick romances. At least it feels like the time frame is quite short, where at this point we've already gone months of texting exchanges and phone calls since their first fake friendship interaction, and we just had a really crazy New Year's Eve party where certain tense but awesome events happened, and it seems like maybe now the conflict and uncertainty of their relationship is coming to light. I'm just really enjoying it so far. I didn't know how I'd feel about it, even though the hype around this book is like insane. But yeah, I'm just giddy. I really, really am having a really fun time with them, and I'm rooting for them. So until my next update. Hey everyone, this is your mid-video reminder to give this video a like if you're still here and enjoying yourselves, and also consider subscribing and ringing that bell, because then you'll be one of the first people to know every time I upload another video. And also feel free to give me suggestions on what other videos or titles you think I should read. Okay, bye everyone, enjoy the second half of the video. Are you serious? Oh my god, I'm so annoyed. Hey everyone, I am giving you another update on Red, White, and Royal Blue, and my update is that I finished it. I planned on giving an update at around like the 250 page mark, but I was having so many mixed feelings that it was getting really frustrating trying to record it, so I just am not going to show you those feelings, and I'm just going to sum up my thoughts in a final review of the book. So the reason why I was having so many problems at around page 250 is because the narrative slowed down significantly, and it was a huge turnaround for me because the first 200 pages were like that. Like, I read them so quickly, I was so invested that suddenly between, say, page 200 and 275, it became so slow that I was skimming through conversations. I was trying to get to another major conflict to grab my attention again. And I want to say that the reason for that is because McQuiston during that time was focusing on the sub-conflicts, so the personal problems within Alex and Henry's individual lives. For instance, Alex's mother is up for re-election as the US president, and so his participation on her campaign team and the familial dynamics of, all those obligations were pressing on him, and so those were the things that he was focusing on, which is realistic, but I wanted it to be sprinkled in with the romance still, and I think the romance just kind of flatlined in a very comfortable situation, but it just ended up making it a bit boring for me. With that said, the political issues discussed in this book are pretty well done, I'd say. I really respect McQuiston for intertwining political and cultural issues with romance, since a lot of times romance is viewed as not handling or dealing with serious topics, whereas this one does, and it kind of has to because it has an LGBT plus romance featured, and when you have that type of representation, there's no way you can't discuss the social, cultural, and political negativity that this country has had since its beginning regarding those people, and let alone the world, including Britain. So I appreciated that she acknowledged that and included those aspects. I just wish that it was more artistically woven in so that there wasn't this big chunk in the very middle where the narrative just slowed down. I also did peek at a few other reviews from others because I wanted to get a good gist of what everyone else loved about it and what everyone else didn't like about it, because entering this book, my only experience with it was the ridiculous hype for it, and that's why it took me so long to finally pick it up, other than the fact that I'm not really a big romance reader. So I thought that someone who reviewed this said it quite well, where the writing was YA level, but the scenes were quite sexual and very spicy, to the fact where you would be like, oh, this is an adult novel. So the tones in those two different aspects clashed, and it made it feel very fan fiction Tumblr-esque. And while that can be super fun and people love reading Wattpad stories and all of those other platforms, I felt very jarred by it, because we have a lot of crude dialogue and language, even by the President of the United States, which I suppose, you know, in her personal life, she may swear and say, you know, certain things. But it was just weird, because at least after the first 200 pages, I just lost any type of excitement when someone said something crude or crazy, because I was just like, okay, it's just flooding over me. It's not funny. It doesn't have the wow factor that it did when these characters were first, you know, saying super outlandish or crude things. So that was one aspect that ended up declining toward the second half of the book, when I was just kind of over it. And then also, while I personally love the Star Wars aspect or the Star Wars comments, because I am newly acquainted with the series, or I guess you would call it a series of movies, since during the pandemic my father introduced them to me, since I'd never seen them before, to his astonishment. But so those references were still quite new to me, though I know that some other people say that that's another overdone inclusion when it comes to romances or teen dramas, I guess, which I didn't realize. However, the one that I did have a problem with was how often Harry Potter was referenced, because while Harry Potter molded many of us, it was a huge part of our childhood. I loved the books, loved the movies. I'm also thinking, okay, it's had its day, like when it comes to making Harry Potter references in adult books, especially adult books that focus on LGBT plus representation. And Harry Potter was written by someone who is transphobic and not a friend or ally of the LGBT plus community. So I really had irksome feelings every time someone referenced Slytherin or some other aspect of Harry Potter. I was like, okay. And I think that's also what gave me like fan fiction Wattpad vibes, because I think that's a tendency. So I feel like I'm just rattling off things I didn't like about this book, but I did root for Alex and Henry, and I absolutely adored the first half of the book. I cannot emphasize that enough, because that's why I pretty much have ignored anonymous sex during those 200 pages, because I just wanted to keep reading and keep reading. However, then the second half of the book, I was like, okay, now I'm ignoring anonymous sex, because I have to finish this book, because if I put it down, I'm afraid I'll DNF it, which is crazy to think about. So I was like, okay, I would say the first half of the book gets 4 stars, but the second half of the book gets 2 stars. So I ended up averaging it and giving it a 3-star read. I think that that's pretty fair for me, especially since I could easily give it 2 stars, since I feel like the ending is pretty important, and you know, don't want to start feeling like you want to DNF a book when you're halfway through it, or at least a little over. So that's why I feel like I'm being quite nice when I give it 3 stars. I'm sorry to those who absolutely adore this book. I hope you can kind of see my perspective in it, and I definitely see myself recommending it to the right people in the future, but it just wasn't as exciting for me overall. So yeah, 3 stars for Red, White, and Royal Blue. Wow. I don't even know what else to say. But I am giving you my second update for Anonymous Sex. In the first update, I read 7 stories. In this update, I've now completed 10 more. And what I can say is that at this point, the stories that you gravitate towards and those that you just don't enjoy as much or don't appreciate says more about you than it does about the stories or the anonymous authors that have written them. Because, yeah, that's the only thing that I've really at least grasped. Because at first, you know, I was like, well, how do I know what is a good story and what isn't when it comes to a genre that I'm not super familiar with? And it's just like anything. Just because it's not for you, that has nothing to do with the author's merit or the characters or the fact that someone else may love those characters. And I think the same thing goes with these erotica stories. So I think I found 3 of my favorite stories in the collection so far. Of course, I've got 10 more stories to go, but my favorites were Find Me, Rapunzel Rapunzel, and Odie and Amo. And I'm not sure what that, I think that translates to I hate and I love you or something. I don't know. But anyway, so for the first story that I'm going to talk about is Find Me. I was so surprised that I enjoyed this. I guess not really, because I do like to read books during this time period, but not necessarily this genre. I don't know. I want to say it gives me Western genre feels, which is weird because I've never actually read a Western. I've watched Western films, but I've never actually read a Western. And this one takes place, I want to say, late 19th century on a train, in which this single woman who's recently become widowed is traveling out west to meet another man to marry him. But while on board, some craziness happens, and a criminal who's on the loose, I think from after either robbing the train or some other, person or business, he hides out on the train and hides in her cabin. And then, of course, amorous events occur, and I just loved the sparks between them. And yeah, I just really appreciated that story, especially because it was unique from a lot of the modern takes that I had been recently reading in this collection. The second one I mentioned was Rapunzel Rapunzel, and the name itself, you probably can guess, means it's a fairy tale retelling of Rapunzel. And it's really weird to think about this, because at first when I started reading it, I started thinking of the Disney film, which is just a bit strange to have that in the same thought process as anonymous sex, since one is family friendly and the other one is not. But I really love the Disney film Tangled, so I wasn't surprised when I loved Rapunzel Rapunzel, because again, it was a familiar story, but it was a very unique look. And that's what retellings are for, You have a lot of the bare bones typical aspects or tropes, but then the author has included some type of unique situation or aspect to the characters, which whoever the author was for that one totally hooked me, and I loved it so much. And then finally, the third story that I really enjoyed was Odie and Amo. Again, maybe pronouncing the title wrong, but this one occurred in another historical fiction setting, but it was more recent, so 1941, I believe, just before the United States goes into World War II, which was definitely an added source of tension between the characters that were within that story. I really enjoyed that one too. I thought the chemistry between the characters in all 3 of these stories were brilliant, and that's why I ended up loving them so much. What was fascinating, and the reason why I brought up the idea of stories you don't like, stories you do like, say more about yourself, is because there were 2 stories that I actually didn't really like very much in this. And I don't know, I think one of them is justified, and the other one you can understand my perspective. So the first one, it was interesting, and I definitely appreciate its existence in this collection, because it brought up the ideas for me that just because something's erotic doesn't mean it has to be erotic for you, or even the goal might not be arousal. which I think is a really big taboo that people anticipate when it comes to erotic fiction, because I wish I can remember what the story was called, but I think it was called First Lust. I may be wrong. Anyway, so it was between these two young boys, which was fine, whatever. The only thing I didn't appreciate was how young they were. It was very weird. I get the whole point of the title being First Lust, so it was the idea of, you know, your first erotic experiences as young people, but they were quite young. I want to say they were, you know, middle school age, which was just weird for me to read, though I liked the perspective it gave me at the end. And then the second story that I didn't really enjoy, and I suppose I shouldn't be surprised that some version of it would be in this collection, but there was this idea of sex workers, and while that is a profession that some people choose to participate in or are forced to do so because of their own financial necessities, what I didn't appreciate about it isn't the inclusion of that part of our reality, because it exists. People participate in it whether they have to or they don't. I didn't like that the character we followed was in a superior position to the young woman who had to participate as a sex worker, and he also was her teacher in the classroom because she was an immigrant and she was taking his English as a second language class, and then he went to her as a customer, and there were clear cues that she did not enjoy this, and it didn't sit right with me to read it, especially because the story was quite long, and I was like, why are we spending so much time? And I don't know if the author of that specific story wanted us to despise the main character, but I did, and it just made me uncomfortable reading the sexual scenes that he pretty much forced her to participate in. So it was like, that was a really weird one. So I've mixed bag of stories in this middle section of the book. I'm really looking forward to the final third, and I hope I can finish it by the end of March. At the moment, I think the date is the 27th, so it's been a long time since I gave you all an update on this collection anyway, but I'm pushing through. This is probably going to end up being a vlog that is published in April, but I appreciate you all hopefully continuing to watch, because I am doing my best and I am enjoying myself. So yeah, until the next update, bye everyone! Final update for Anonymous Sex, and just as a reminder, this collection is edited by Hillary Jordan and Cheryl Lu Lian-Tan, and I am really grateful that I ended up reading this book. So I ended up finishing the last 10 stories, so the last third of the book, and every single story just was a reminder of how diverse the collection is, which obviously was among the many goals that these editors had when they started this project. I just can't get over how different every story is, and how any reader who approaches it will find some character, some story, some plot that relates to them or that ends up intriguing them to keep reading. I also enjoyed how in this last section, as well as in one story in the middle section of the book, the self-referential nature of some of these stories. In my last update, I forgot to mention that there's a story that involves metafiction in a sense, where the author has their narrator be one of the authors for this collection, and it literally references this collection being written, saying, I'm writing this knowing that you, their ex-lover, is also in this collection, and you're gonna read this knowing that this is about us. And I was like, this is crazy, this is so fun. And that's the whole point of, I don't know, this anonymity is really nice because it allows for experimentation. But in the last section, I read a book about a married couple. Both of them are journalists, and they used to write for an erotica lit magazine. And the reason why they did that, they co-wrote a series together, is because they earned more money doing that than they did for any of their journalistic pursuits, which is just amazing. And honestly, I believe it. It was really fun because it ended up in the end being more about the mundane lives of married people and their sex lives, and how it doesn't change that they can still be arousing or intimate and fun, but it's just a completely different dynamic from when you're single or before having kids. So I just thought that that was a really interesting light to include in this collection. Yeah, I really think that this is a collection that hopefully more people will read. I know that it was just published this year in 2022, but I'm really hoping that more people take a chance on this type of literature, because the authors make a great point that erotica fiction can be taken seriously, and too many people believe that it's taboo or cringy, whereas some of these stories were beautiful or exciting in the action that was going on. So it's way more than just the inclusion of sex scenes or intimate moments. So I really appreciated that I read it, and I've decided to give this book 4 stars because I really enjoyed it. I suppose I want to give the project itself and the message 5 stars, but because I didn't obviously love every story, which you're not meant to, you probably are meant to gravitate towards the stories that speak to you. So it's not surprising that every story didn't speak to me in a certain way, but I think this is a great collection. I think more people should try to read it if you're comfortable reading this type of content. Yeah, super fun video vlog. I hope that you all enjoyed it as well, and if you've read either of these, please leave a comment because I'd love to discuss them with you, because I really don't know anyone who's read either of them, even though everyone under the sun has read Red, White, and Royal Blue. My friends in my friend group, that's not something that they read either. So I'd love to discuss with you all. If you made it to the end of the video and you really enjoyed it, then consider giving me a like, and then also consider subscribing to my channel and ringing that little bell, because then you'll be notified every time I make more videos like this. All right, everyone, thank you for spending some of your day with me today. Bye! Like and subscribe.